Hello, Floss family. Today I am pleased to be joined by Jack Roach, who is a qualified swim coach with an impressive resume that includes being the national youth team head coach at USA Swimming and director of coaching and athlete development for Thai Swimming, where he coached our very own Floss intern, Tara Larusso, who now swims for the University of Pennsylvania. So thanks for joining us, Jack.
Well, Trey, I want to thank you and Flawless for allowing me to be a part of your ventures and path, and love the fact that we're getting together and talking about things we share in common.
Definitely, very well said, Jack. And to start us off, I gotta ask. This is such a tough year right now with everything going on. So I wanna ask you, how are you really doing right
Yeah, anyone, I have a question for someone else, and it's one that there's not a black and a white answer to it, right? And so when I ask someone a question and they go, "I'm doing great," I feel like, well, they just don't really want to talk about the truth. And they're good and bad parts of what we're going through right now. And I think to start, when first started to watch this whole process evolve, I felt as though the future crashed into the current moment so quickly that we just started to sort of spin out. And being the age that I am, I feel like from 1945 till the present moment, it'll never be the same again. And when I start to think about that, I almost feel as though I'm someone who is watching the fall of the Roman Empire in
now?
a certain way. And I, from there, I believe when it initially happened, I certainly went into a low grade of grief. But having said that, once I started to identify all of these things, there's so many great takeaways too, right? You're seeing all of these different shifts in the way that society is operating, and I certainly embrace change. I do believe that in many ways we're seeing the strong get stronger and the weak get weaker. And there's an upside to that, and there's a downside to that. There's a lot of concern for what that looks like for the weaker and how we can sweep in and contribute to supporting that. And then there's an upside to the strong getting stronger, like observing what they're doing when they start to move in that direction and possibly modeling our lives after them.
Wow, Jack, that was super deep, and I appreciate you being super candid and super honest with us. And so much of what you said just makes me think of not only what I'm going through, but then what a lot of our athletes are going through. And like you said, this pandemic is hitting a lot of people hard. And I think you as a coach and me as a former athlete, we see it's really hitting our athletes hard with many sports being canceled. So, just in your personal experience, as a coach, how have you seen this pandemic hit some of the athletes that you're working with?
Yeah, what a great question. And you could go into a real deep discussions on that. Trey, I work with three different levels of athletes. I work with the club or high school and lower athlete. I work with the collegiate athlete, and I work with the professional athlete. And we could almost break all of those down a little bit differently. If I look at what has been going on with the high school or youth sport athlete, that you see programs that are actually failing financially and shutting down. You see uncertainty in competing in their highest level meet. And you certainly saw a shutdown of the program completely. And then based on the sport we're talking about, some of them haven't gotten back up to par yet. I happen to be in a sport that a lot of it's outdoors and it's in the water, and that has had probably the most rapid rebound of any sport. You are outdoors and you are in the water, and there's less risk of the virus impacting you than if you're indoors and you have to be close proximity in a competitive sport. On the college level, the first thing that I saw taking place was NC2As and conferences were shutting down again in the sport of swimming. And that just kept going in other sport as we move forward through the season. So you saw the spring sports start to shut down completely, and it's even carrying into the fall now. The other part that was very impactful for many of the athletes that I stay in contact with were a lot of the college athletes that had graduated but were going to go to law school or med school or grad school. And so they had gotten permission to put their lives on hold to train for the Olympic Games in 20. And all of a sudden, the 20 games are canceled or changed to 21. And many of them, that dream left them. They could no longer pursue the Olympic possibility. And for some, they were able to restructure what was going on. And then on the professional swimming level, which is really interesting, there is a professional swim league that takes place. And normally you go to about 8 different meets all over the United States or world through that season. And what they've done is they have taken a look at what the NBA did by sequestering people in one area. And this league is being sequestered. There's 8 teams in this league, and they're all going to Budapest, Hungary, and will be together for 6 weeks, and they'll train and compete. So their entire season will be protected in terms of trying to keep everyone as healthy as you possibly can. So yeah, there's a lot of different things going on in my world.
Yeah, and I see that there's just so much to navigate, so much going on. So what I would ask you is, you seeing that, you being a part of that, what advice do you have for these athletes as their athletic careers and athletic lives are changing so much? Like, what advice do you have to keep them upbeat, or to, just keep them going?
Yeah, I believe that, initially when this first happened and the Olympic Games were canceled, I was receiving a lot of phone calls from kids who felt like they were really on track and moving in the right direction, and felt like they were where they needed to be to possibly make the team and then impact the Olympic Games. And all of a sudden, after the reality of, well, this is something much bigger than sport, how can I refocus what I should be doing in order to be a part of something bigger than myself? And those were the people that became very healthy right away and had a very clear view on the direction that they should go in order to. I mean, if you become part of something bigger than yourself, you're going to grow so exponentially that when you get back into what you're going to do, it's going to be so much richer than it was before you left it. And that's what I feel like I see happening. Using myself as an example, I'm a Vietnam vet, and I can remember leaving Vietnam and having all these different feelings about why did I leave Vietnam alive? Why am I okay? And then I started to realize that the only thing that I could do is to honor the people that I left behind. And I feel like that's the way I've structured my life now. I'm not likely to sit on a couch and watch Netflix in the middle of the day, because I want to honor those people that sacrifice so much for me. And I know that this might be a little different scale, but if people can start to look at the people that have helped them get to where they are now and honor those people during this time, it's all about perspective. And you'll be ready to go when it's time to go and you have the opportunity to get back to normal, because I do believe we will get back to normal.
Jack, you just like emit so much wisdom and just everything that you're saying, and I really appreciate that. But that also lets me know that, you've been through a lot, you've experienced a lot, and we're talking about our athletes, we're giving a lot of advice for our athletes, but also for you and also for other coaches, it's a tough time. And so I don't know if you want to just speak about some of your experiences as a coach, when things get tough, when things get difficult, and how you manage and navigate that, and how you're managing the current situation right now as a coach.
Yeah, that's a great question, right? I think about that all the time, and I think we're basically talking about mental toughness. I mean, there's degrees of toughness in sport, and we all understand the physical. It, there are three things that we can train in as human beings. One is the body, one's the mind, and one's our craft. And I'm talking particularly about swimming, but it applies to all phases of life. That the best explanation that I've ever heard on mental toughness is when when nothing is going right, what's the next best thing? And I think about that all the time. I look at the way that we as individuals fundamentally set up our lives. How do you fundamentally set up your life? Are you setting it up to see how much you can accomplish? Are you setting it up not to fail? And it may look a little bit alike, but they're so different. If you're setting yourself up to see what you can accomplish, you love the challenge that you may fail, and you understand the consequences of failing are really getting better at what you're doing. If you're setting your life up not to fail, then you're protecting yourself and putting yourself in a place where you aren't going to reach your full potential. So, what's the next most important thing when you fail? Like, move on, get over it, move on, get over it, move on. And the tough part about teaching, mental toughness is a trained ability, but the tough part about it is when you're trying to teach it, when someone's failing, they don't want to learn it. They don't want to talk about what could go right. So yeah, those are interesting things to discuss, and I think it's so individual. If I can watch someone in that process and feel like I can reach in and make a difference in what's going on, but it's yeah, it's an individual thing. But I think I summarized it relatively well.
No, you definitely did. I mean, I wish that, you were one of my coaches in football, because, all the advice you just gave and that wisdom, I'm reflecting on my experiences and challenges that I faced as an athlete. And if I just had a change of perspective, how different, some plays or some games could have went for me. So I definitely appreciate that.
Well, thanks, Trey. Trey, before we move forward, there's another part of that I think that never is discussed that should be discussed. And when you talk about there's only three things that you can train, and you talk about the body, the mind, and the craft. The craft itself, you're probably talking about things like skill levels in different areas, which can be measured. You can look at them and you can measure them. Tactical discussions on what you should do and your approach to it and how it best impacts you reaching your full potential. Those can be measured. And the physical part's easy to measure. You just look at the gains that are made physically, but you cannot measure the mind. And that throws both the athlete and the coach off a little bit. But I honestly believe this. I believe that if you can create the right community with a team, within a team, then all of a sudden you can start to teach someone that, or not teach, show them that they possess all the insights they need to reach their full potential. I, as a coach, cannot give that to them. I can help them seek out that potential and start to ask themselves the questions that they already have the answer to. And that all of a sudden, I think you start to allow a young person in sport to realize that they do not want to try not to fail. They want to see what all they can accomplish.
Yeah, and I think if I'm understanding this correctly, it's as if you're giving the success of an athlete, like you're giving them that autonomy to find the success, that it's within you, as opposed to, because in so many situations, in my experience, we put so much on the coach to bring that out of an athlete. But what you're saying is you're putting it back on the athlete, that the potential is within you and that you can reach it.
Yeah, and I don't like the term putting it back, because I think you're just giving them a sense of awareness. It's not a chore. It's a coach's responsibility. I think too many coaches feel like they tell people what to do, and that's the way to accomplish it. And then the athlete walks away feeling like they need someone to tell them what to do in order to do it right. And you're accomplishing the same thing, maybe, although long-term wise, the mental health of what you're accomplishing with the athlete that you're helping to self-discover themselves, it's so different. And the potential is so much greater.
Yeah, no, I love and I agree with everything you're saying. This is it reminds me. I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. Bruce Perry, but a lot of what you're saying reminds me of his same rhetoric when it comes to coaching up athletes and instead of coaching them down. So definitely appreciate the words you're saying. But again, moving forward and talking about the value of sports, I think we saw the value of sports when quarantine started with social distancing, and a lot of us lost that sense of connection, and then we also lost for a lot of people, one of our main sources of entertainment in sports. So I remember you saying you think we'll get back to normal. As we progress to getting back to normal, how important do you see sports to just bring us all together collectively as people?
Yeah, I think that that's a great question, and I wish that the heads of sports would start to recognize sport in a little different way. I often hear when someone is standing up and talking about the benefit of sport, I hear them talk about goal setting. I hear them talk about teaching work ethic. I hear them talking about uh, more responsibility and acceptance. And, I think I see that everywhere. I coached at the University of Texas, and I had enough sleepless nights running through the campus and looking at the library and seeing people in there at 1 and 2 in the morning that weren't athletes at all. And they have every one of those skills, right? They know what hard work means. They understand all of that. What we don't do as leaders of sport is we don't give the right message. I believe that sport is giving you an unofficial PhD in team.
Hmm.
When you're in a sport, you start to have a clear understanding of what a good teammate is, a great understanding of what a bad teammate is. You've already got, by the time you're in college, you've already got the 10,000 hour rule that everyone talks about in mastering something. And I don't believe, we look at this pandemic right now, we know that one bright mind is not going to resolve this. It's going to take a group of people working together to solve this problem. Nowhere else in any kind of education do you get a group of people working together on a day-to-day basis the way you get it in sport. And that's what sport provides that no youth can get in their formal education anywhere else. Sure, you have ROTC, you have some kind of group project, but this is day in and day out, watching people fail and watching people succeed and helping them and celebrating that and working together to solve something day to day. And you just don't get that anywhere else other than sport.
I wholeheartedly agree. And, bringing up teams, the importance of a team. I want to mention my team member, somebody that we both know. So let's brag up a little bit about Tara Larusso. And, she's been a great addition to the Flawless team. But, I want to know, is she as good of a swimmer as she is an intern for us? And just, if you want to reflect on your experience coaching her up into the athlete that she is today.
Yeah, I could talk a long time about Tara. It was pretty early on. I realized that the poise and the grace in which she moved through sport into life was one where she had the potential to be a rainmaker. And you know, she was a team leader in the club that or the team that I coached that she worked with. And I think the unique quality about her leadership was she led from the rear. And that takes a very unique quality where there's this silence about you, but this ability to guide and steer and uh, nurture relationships into growing a team that she possessed. That I don't know how those qualities are attained. I don't have the capabilities of creating those qualities in someone. I almost feel like you're born with those, but that those and she always challenged herself on a daily basis. Yeah, just she always did the quiet, hard work. Mentally was going on at a young age, and that allows someone to reach their full potential relatively early.
Definitely. And, like you said, I don't think there's enough we can say about Tara. I've only known her for a short time, but, she's made a huge impact in her short time with us. So glad to see that also carries over into her sport.
I'm not surprised, but I'm certainly happy to hear that.
Definitely, definitely. But, my last question for you, Jack, is we have this concept of a flawless world. And despite everything happening that you mentioned, you said things are different. I think it's from 1945 to now, like we're moving differently. So, how do you see that moving differently positively? And I guess what's giving you hope that as we move differently, we'll move to a more flawless world?
Yeah, I put a huge value on awareness of personal responsibility. And that goes straight to relationships building. I believe there are only two things that shape our lives. It's people and events. And if you look at both of those are impacted by relationships. And uh, my connections through relationships, I've found that I become my relationship with myself, my relationship with others, and my relationship with Mother Nature. I love nature. And I become the man I'm working on being through relationships. I believe that I'm already that man. I just cannot always access him. But when I am that man, my heartbeat gets a little bigger.
Wow. Jack, I've said it before and I'll say it again. The wisdom that you just admit, I've really enjoyed this conversation with you today. So again, thank you for joining us. But before we go, we talked a little bit offline about some of the things that you're affiliated right now. So I don't know if you'd like to talk to the Flawless family about Tide and the International Swim League and just shout them out a little bit and show some light onto what you're working with right now.
Yeah, Trey, you're real kind to allow me to give some thanks to different teams that I'm a part of that mean a lot to me, and certainly Tide Swimming in Virginia Beach, where I met Tara, uh, is a huge family for me and has become, back to people and events have shaped my life. They've made a huge difference in a move I made from Colorado to Virginia 5 years ago. And I have a community here, a group of friends that support me and uh, are very valuable to who I am as a person in life. And then the other is the International Swim League. This is its second year in existence, and not a lot of people know about it, but I would encourage you to kind of keep an eye on NBC Sports over the next 2 months, and they are going to start carrying swim meets in Budapest with really the best 500 swimmers in the world right now on 8 different teams that represent every country in the world. And it's pretty neat stuff to watch. It's new. And, swimming is always has a tough time professionally. We kind of come into sight every 4 years, but we're trying to promote swimming in a little bit different way on a little more consistent level. So thank you.
Definitely. And we'll make sure that we add links to the description of this video so that people can check out the websites for both of those organizations. But again, thank you, Jack. I feel like we just scratched the wisdom of what you have, but I feel like I got wiser today just listening to you speak. So once again, thank you for finding the time to speak with me today.
Well, I appreciate the challenging questions, and I'm certainly a better man for having had this conversation with you than I was when I started, Trey.
Thank you, Jack.